If you're new here, welcome. Today I wanted to share something that's really close to my heart when it comes to finances. And I'm going to talk us through a tough season that I recently went through. And I'm going to talk about how I reset my finances after a tough season. And my prayer is that the steps that I took will help you overcome a tough season and get to financial peace, financial clarity, and financial overflow. If you've been through a tough season, if you're currently going through a tough season, this would be like a video that would be a starting point to turn you around, right? When it comes to your finances, right? So that you can begin to walk in financial peace, with financial clarity, and also in financial restoration. Now, I recently went through a tough season. It's been a couple of years now already, but it was a long season and it really affected my finances and the finances of our household. We had gotten used to being at a certain level financially, and things changed. And it's not the first time that it's happened in my life, right? Life happens. Life's. Right? And you're not a bad Christian when life is lifing financially. There's some seasons in life that you just cannot avoid, right? And in those seasons, the last thing you want to think about is staying on track with your bills, right? There's some seasons, like the season that I just came out of, that are just about survival and surviving the current, right? And so if you were currently in a tough season and all you're doing is trying to survive, right? I want to encourage you that God is with you even in the toughest season, and you will get out of this. There is light at the end of the tunnel. And just like me, you will be able to reset, rebuild, and restore everything that the enemy has taken from you. Now, the first thing I did after I started to break out of this season, it is a season where I battled with sickness. And so after I became whole, health-wise, I had to figure out the path forward. And the only thing I could do as a Christian, the only thing I know how that works to get my mind right, to get me back on track, is sitting at the feet of Jesus in prayer, in total surrender. And that is what I did. The Bible tells us in the book of Matthew 6:33, it says, "But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you." I didn't know where help was going to come from. I don't want to cry, but I reminded myself of all the victories that I've had in the past in my walk with God. And I reminded myself that the same God that pulled me out of the fire many times before is the same God that was pulling me out of the fire that I was in now. So the first step to resetting your finances when coming out of a tough season is trusting God and seeking Him first for the strength to move forward, for the strength to proceed, to take the next step, for the wisdom to manage the new season, for the healing, for the forgiveness of yourself and maybe others. It depends on what your situation is, right? If you came to a financial hit because of someone else's decisions, right? Forgive them. If stuff just happened because life was lifing, like in my case, right? Forgiving myself for being hard on myself and wanting to recover quickly. Surrendering and trusting God for the new season and letting go of control of what the new season was going to look like for me. And after all that, the next thing I asked was for God to give me a roadmap, right? To give me a vision of what my next season required of me financially. And I wrote that vision down. I wrote the vision and I made it plain. And so after you've sat with God, the next thing that you want to do is ask God for a roadmap, for wisdom, for strategy, for what your next season should look like, or what God's vision is for your next season. Let go of your own vision. Ask God what his vision is for you financially for your next season. And once you've had that time to write the vision and make it plain, the next thing is facing the disaster, right? The disaster that is your finances. If you took a financial hit, more than likely, you don't want to look at your finances right now. But I'm here to tell you that you have to face it to fix it, right? And so your third step is facing your current financial state, knowing the state of your flocks, as the Bible says. And that might look like opening up bills that maybe you've ignored because you've been too depressed to open the mail, or you've been too sick to manage what's been going on, or you've been too angry at the divorce that got you in this situation. Whatever the case is, it's time to dust yourself off, pick up the pieces and face it to fix it. So one practical thing you can do is download 3 to 6 months of your banking activity and really just look through it to see where all your money has been going, right? And when you look at your bank activity, you're really saying what came in, what went out, who do I owe, what needs my immediate attention right now. And of course, the immediate attention when you're coming out of a tough season is shelter, food, right? Safety. You're not doing this to shame yourself, but you're doing this to have clarity so that you can have peace around your money and your finances. And what you're doing is just facing it. We're not doing anything yet. You're just facing it. This is the current state of your finances, right? How much are you bringing in? How much is going out? Is the inflow less than the outflow? Like in my case, the inflow had become much less than the outflow. And just stay with it. Look at your current financial position and just sit in it. Stay in it. Now, you could be in this place for a day. You could be in this place for a week. Whatever it takes, right? But be honest with yourself. With honesty comes peace. Now, once you've faced it, then you go to the next step. You have to accept it first, right? Then you go to the next step. In my case, the next step was asking God to increase, to show me how I can increase my inflow, because we as a family had gotten to a time where our inflow had become less than our outflow, right? And so I had to ask God to show me what was it in me that I could use, that he could use within me to create more income, right? And because it was a health journey, God was showing me gradually as my health got better, I started doing small things first to increase our income as a household. And then the things got bigger as my strength got bigger. And the Bible tells us that God gives us the power to create wealth. And so I prayed for the power. I prayed for the strength to create more income, because that was the urgent need. We needed to create more income in our household so we could first match the outflow before we could even think of anything else, right? And as the income increased, I continued to ask God for wisdom. Where should this money go? This additional money, God, show me, where should this additional money go? Because many times financial experts will rush to tell you to cut expenses. But what about if you're at a point where you've cut all the expenses you possibly could cut, and you're still in a place where your outflow is more than your inflow, right? We got to get practical, Christians. We got to get practical. When we're at that point, the most practical thing to do is increase your income. And sometimes, unfortunately, pride might be a hindrance to increasing your income. Some of you had flourishing businesses, and the only way to increase your income might be going back to a 9-to-5. And many Christians will say, well, God told me to do this, and I'm not, we'll just hold on. But what is behind holding on to that failing business? Is it pride? Is pride telling you that you should not go back to a 9-to-5? If that 9-to-5 is going to feed your kids, if that 9-to-5 is going to pay your bills and give you even mental stability, it's not a salvation issue, right? It's a practical issue here. Sometimes it might involve the opposite way, right? Maybe the 9-to-5 that you're in is not enough for your current outflow. And God has been telling you to start a business in your extra time. But because of pride, and because of maybe the type of job that you hold, or because you're worried about what are people going to think if they see me selling my crafts or the stuff that I bake, or they see me selling lessons online, are they going to think that I'm not making enough money, we're not making enough money, so we're resorting to selling cupcakes, right? And you don't want to look low. Humility is going to be the key here when it comes to rebuilding. Whichever way, right, that God guides you, your own personal guide, your own personal roadmap that God gives you, you have to be obedient and follow it. Because when you worry about people, you don't know, those people don't pay your bills. You don't know what's going on in their bank account. You don't know if you're making more money than they are, right? Don't worry about people. Worry about what God is doing in your life and being obedient to what He has been telling you to do, and put aside fear or pride. And then number 4 thing is really focus on one thing first and do that thing well. So let's say He calls you from a business back to a 9-to-5. For that new season, what you would do is focus on that 9-to-5 very, very well. Put all, quote unquote, your eggs in that one basket first until it starts generating and it stabilizes and starts generating the kind of income that will get you to a point where your inflow is more than your outflow, right? Or if He tells you the other way, He tells you to start a business, focus on that one idea. That one idea, focus on it. There'll be many ideas. God gives us multiple talents. Most of us are multifaceted, right? But focus on that one thing for a set time period until that business starts to generate more income in the household, more income in the business, to where your outflows are exceeding your inflows are exceeding your outflows. Sorry. And once you've focused on that one thing and it's stabilized, then you can move on to something else. But don't try to do 10 things at once, hoping that one of them will succeed and give you overflow. What you're going to do is burn out. And what you're going to do is try and put all your energy in different buckets, and nothing will end up working out. Because scattered efforts creates scattered results, and you want to focus your energy on one thing at a time. Now, after you start rebuilding and focusing, you want to rebuild, of course, with humility, but also with consistency, right? So if it's a business, then you want to be consistent. If He tells you to sell one hair product, if you go into prayer and God says, create that formula I told you to help people who are losing hair, create this hair oil, focus on that one oil and be consistent. Be consistent in marketing, be consistent in selling it, be consistent in cold reach out, whatever it is that you need to do to sell that one product, be consistent in it. If He calls you back to a 9-to-5, be consistent, show up with excellence, show up early, be happy, be the light in that workplace, right? Go above and beyond, exceed the expectations of the role that you have been called into. Keep showing up. keep being consistent. And finally, after you've done all this, right? After I'd done all this, I created a weekly money rhythm. I had it in the past, and then with everything that happened in my life, it almost feels like I threw everything out the window and I had to start over. And basically what you're doing in your monthly rhythm is, in your weekly rhythm, is you're reviewing what came in that week, what went out that week, what unexpected bills came up, what needs to be adjusted, and then you create a plan for the next week. What was my one win this week, and what was the one thing I need to correct for next week? I'll give you an example. So let's say you have started your business and you're focusing on selling that hair oil. Okay. Maybe this is for someone out there that God has told to create hair oil for hair loss for women in perimenopause. I don't know if that's you. Say me in the comments. But focus on that. And then at the end of the week, your win would be, I sold 5 bottles this week, right? Or I sold 10 bottles on TikTok Shop, on Instagram, well, whatever it is, you write that down. That's a win. Celebrate it, right? And then something that you need to learn from could be, I went out to eat when it wasn't part of my plan for the week, right? So for the next week, you say, I'm going to do better this week. I'm not going to touch takeout at all. I'm going to cook from whatever I have in my refrigerator so that I can reduce my outflows, right? It's just as simple as that. Really, like 10 minutes of a weekly money rhythm. So create a money rhythm. You start weekly, and then as time goes, it could be bi-weekly, and then it could be monthly. But while you're still in the season of restoration, you want to do this weekly. So I hope that helped you. I've never been one to cry on camera, but this was a video that I knew I had to create to help others like me that are having to go through a season of resetting and rebuilding, and trust that God will restore everything that the enemy has stolen from you. God will restore.